We are beginning a new Mishnah, Mishnah 8, at least in the art scroll count. And this is the last Mishnah of a whole sequence that we've had Hillel teaching us various teachings. And this one is a long list of things that part of it is going to be things that if you overindulge in is problematic. Others, with the spiritual side, overindulging can never hurt too much spirituality. So we'll put it on the board for you. Mishnah says here, Hu haya omer, he's still Hillel, he's still talking. He used to say, Marbe basar marbe rima. The more flesh, or the increasing in flesh, the more worms. And marbe, this one may be a little more famous, marbe nechosim marbe daga. The more property, the more possessions you have, the more worry. And he's going to go on. Actually, we'll maybe live for a second here. Just more wives, the more witchcraft, the more maidservants, the more lewdness, the more slaves, the more theft. Those are the five that have to do with physical. And then Marba Torah, Marba Chaim, the more Torah, more life, more study, more wisdom, etc. Those are the spiritual sides. But we're going to only be concentrating on the first two for today. And the Mishnah is essentially saying that if you're going to put a general statement, is that when you overindulge in physical things, you have a tendency, you can assume that it's going to be a negative. Everything in moderation, but if you do excess, it's going to, instead of being more of a good thing, it's going to become a negative. So the first one is more flesh or more meat, the more worms. So Rashi looks at it and says, well, the more, of course, the more you eat, or meat in particular, maybe specifically, but certainly the more you eat, then you'll have more for the worms to eat after a person dies, right? When the body decays, there'll be more there for them to deal with. We also can look at it as the even within your lifetime, as Tiferes Yisrael points out, that the more we eat too much, right, it becomes unhealthy. So while we think, oh, look, I'm having more of a good thing, but ultimately, in most cases, it's going to become unhealthy. Person becomes obese. Other various illnesses come in. We're all, of course, unfortunately, we're all familiar with these things. And the Mishnah is telling us, and Hillel is telling us, that is the way human beings are, and we have to be careful in what we eat and not to overindulge. This idea of the worms in terms of is that even after a person dies, so obviously your body decays, but the sages tell us that there's certain pain that is felt by the body, and it's not necessarily the body feeling it, but the soul is feeling it. So a person, even after they're dead, the decay when the worms are eating whatever exactly it is, there's a certain pain that gets involved, and the Gemara says that it's as painful to a dead person as a needle in your flesh, which indicates that there's something there that somehow the soul feels what's happening. Tiferes Yisrael actually looks at this whole picture as a progression. He says that in a person, a human being, right, when we're born as a child, and we go through stages of life, and each of the five things that are going to be mentioned here are at different stages in a person's life. So in the beginning, when a person's a baby, so basically all you really are thinking about is food. There's not anything else in a baby's mind really of significance other than food. And that's the first stage. And the second stage, if you get a little older, money becomes an issue. Having wealth, having things, having possessions. Doesn't have to be money, and it doesn't have to be wealth in a sense, but people like to have things, right? Kids like to have things as well. So when you're 1 or 2 years old, it's not hitting you, but when you get a little older than that, so that's the second stage. And he's going to go through each of these various stages. You get a little older, it becomes the opposite sex becomes an issue. But at the younger stage, really the baby, they're concentrating on is that immediate thing. And when a person gets caught up in that, then again it becomes harmful to them. So an interesting thing with this from the Sfas Emes, which talks about eating meat, and he says that meat on Shabbos is not harmful, right? We like to joke that calories don't count on Shabbos, right? That when we eat on Shabbos, it doesn't. Well, it seems maybe not exactly that, but there's a concept that he says that meat on Shabbos isn't harmful, even though meat could be something which is normally not so healthy. And he says the Shabbos meal is compared to the mun, right? We know that many of the things we do at the meal, we have the tuchalos, etc. It's a commemoration of the mun that was provided for the Jews in the desert. And when it talks about the man, the Torah tells us, "V'rima lo haitabo." There was no rima, right? Here we say mar berima. There was no decay. There was nothing in the. If you remember the story of the man, what happened was that there were some people. They were told that they were not allowed to leave it overnight, and there were some people who were told they were Dasan and Aviram that they decided they were going to show up, Moshe, and they were going to leave it out overnight. And what ended up happening is it got wormy and it got spoiled. And but on Friday, when they got the double portion, and that was left overnight, there was not that was fine. It's a verima lo haitaba. There was no worms in it. There was nothing there. It didn't decay. So we were told about the man that on Shabbos it's going to stay good. And he said the man, when you ate the man included the taste of meat. So just as the man, when you ate it properly, as the catch, when you ate it properly, meaning you ate it from Friday to Shabbos, but not during the week you didn't leave it over, but only from Friday to Shabbos you could leave it over. If you did that, then it didn't have any reman, it didn't have any worms, it didn't spoil. So too, food eaten on Shabbos for the right reasons doesn't. It would have to be when you're eating it for the concept of oneg Shabbat. You're trying to not just have your personal indulgence, but to do it in the spirit of what Shabbat is all about. So that's the idea, and maybe that might be the source of where people come to say there's no calories on Shabbos. In terms of the second part, mar b'nechasim, right? The more property you have, the more worry. Right? We probably are familiar with that idea. In a sense, if you don't have too much, you don't have too much to worry about either because there's not that much there. But the more you have, the more you have to start worrying what's going to happen to it, right? When you have a lot of money, you say, well, what am I going to do with it? Where are we going to put it? How am I going to protect it? Especially if you have a lot of properties. In fact, the Bartanura brings down a quote of a person, someone had said he prayed that he should have what's called pizur hanefesh. They ask, what does that mean? He says pizur is scattered, like it's to be scattered of the soul. He said, I don't want to have that. He said, why? I don't want to have my properties should be scattered all over the place. If whatever I own should be in the same place, because if it's all over the place, then I have to go and follow up on it. It's much harder to deal with. If everything's in one place, then it's easier. I don't have to split myself apart worrying about all my different things. And we know that people spend a lot of time worrying about their possessions. And the idea is that, of course, always be satisfied with what we have, but when we do have also responsibility. So do we really need that? Do we need to worry about all of the things that we have in different far-flung places? And I was thinking, actually, in business, we also have a tendency, I believe they say, a person should, if you're in business, stick to what you know, right? Many businesses fail when they start getting into other areas that was not their niche. It's true there are money national corporations, et cetera, but if you're running a business and you're diversifying into things that you don't know very much about, that's when your business is going to fail. So the more you get involved, it's not always a good thing. The person stays with what they can be good at and they are able to manage, then you have less to worry about. And the more you spread it out, another issue which it comes to increasing money and increasing wealth or possessions is that generally we are not satisfied ever, no matter how much we have. And that's the nature of many people, most people. And the Talmud tells us if a person has 100, he wants 200. You have 200, you want 400. This is how it goes. And therefore, The more you have, the more you need to manage, the more you're going to spend time on, and everything gets much more complicated. We are probably familiar also with the idea that it's been many studies about people who won the lottery, right? Who ended up losing all their money because they didn't know how to handle it, right? So there is a lot of issues dealing with people who have too much wealth and are not able to deal with it. So we're not necessarily asking for an abundance of wealth. We're asking to have what we need and be able to manage, and not to get to a point where we have more than we personally can handle. And that's the idea of marbe nechasim, marbe da'aga, that the more you have, the more you have to worry about, and you don't want to lose sleep over your various possessions. We'll have to stop here. Have a great